agnostics, and to distill this down in very simple terms, agnostics typically will say there's probably a God, but I don't, or a divine something, but I don't feel qualified to comment on what that looks like. That's typically, in the most boiled down form, what agnosticism will look like. For an atheist, depending on the kind of atheist you have or are, an atheist will sometimes say, well, I really don't believe in God. There's no evidence for God. I just don't see that God exists, or I don't see that there's evidence for a divine force. Most atheists are going to tend not to believe in a kind of supernatural anything. They just don't see evidence for it. They find it problematic. Some atheists are going to be more antagonistic towards religious people who do see evidence for God or evidence for the divine. So there is a difference there. I would say, with respect to Satan, there are passingly few Satanists in the United States. They're such tiny numbers. They really are very, very few and far between, and there are certain geographic spaces in the Northeast and along this Southeast corridor where they live, but they are such a tiny presence that they almost don't exist. And your interviewee was exactly right. An atheist would say, there is no Satan, there's no God, why would there be Satan? So yeah, I think it's funny though, because people often say, well, you're an atheist, that must be a bad thing, or you're irreligious, or you're somehow scary, because you're not like me, because I do see evidence for the divine or something. And so I think that's where that association has gotten built. It is very funny and strange and really doesn't make sense. Yeah, I find that also very funny because it posits that, in the US of course, that Christians are pro-creation and anti-Christian, whatever that is pro-evolution, right? We have teams. And that's just not accurate, of course. Many Christians are invested in the idea of scientific evolution. I'm not aware of atheists who are invested in creationism, but there might be some. I think that the reason, again, that has arisen is that there are certain well-known public figures who are very invested in antagonism toward creationism. And those folks often are atheist. And so a kind of built-in association between sort of scientific empiricism and atheism arises. So I would say no. That I know many atheists who don't care a lick about science. That often happens, actually. Okay. The examples that come to mind most immediately are often, you could even be atheist, I think, and be Jewish or another religious tradition. Often people who are culturally sort of tied to their religious tradition. I'm thinking of cultural Catholics or cultural Jews who feel like those components of their identity are so strong that they can't let them go, but they don't believe in God, or they might think that there could be evidence for God, but they're very unwilling to say much about the divine. That is absolutely possible. Okay. And it's not uncommon. It's a problem. Yeah, I would be loath to say to an atheist, you're religious. Yeah. Get used to it, because I think that's trouble. But I think, again, from a kind of standpoint of studying these groups as phenomena, I would say if you identify very strongly as atheist, and many people identify as nothing at all, that's where things get trickier.
Yeah, what if you're just like, what if you say you're not agnostic? Like, does anyone ever say they're not agnostic and they're not atheist?
Yeah, I'm just not anything.